Hello and welcome back. Today I wanted to do something that I haven't done before, and this is actually going to be a tag video. I have never made a tag video before, and I honestly am not very interested in them. I don't really particularly watch many booktube tag videos or things. However, Sophie, who I love to watch on YouTube talk about books and things, has made her own original tag, which she titled "What Matters About Reading?" And she posed some really thoughtful questions that I would actually like to talk about and share. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. I just recently watched a PBS documentary called The Librarians, which is free on YouTube. I highly suggest everyone watch that. It's really, really well done and especially important. It's about book banning, and when it comes to reading, what matters about it is everything. It's just so important, and that's why I wanted to tackle this tag today and answer these very wonderful and thoughtful questions that Sophie had for us. What do you want to get out of reading, and what stays with you after? This is something that is wildly different depending on the book that I'm reading. What do I want to get out of reading? Just as a whole, I would say knowledge. I read to become better informed on a variety of different things, and that can just be experiences that people are having that I'm unfamiliar with, to historical events and things like that. And I think that fiction, as much as nonfiction, teaches me about different things that I have not experienced, whether that's because they're from many, many years ago, or because I'm not a person from that background or country who speaks that language or something like that. And I think that books are such an amazing tool to build empathy. It's something that I believe every single person could strive to do better in. There's always room for more empathy and understanding among other people, and that's something that I find really important, and is something that I read to exercise. I read to exercise my empathy and understanding to others, and to also increase my worldview. What stays with me after reading is what is so specific book to book. Sometimes I read a book, and within a month or two, it's gone from my memory. I only now have the larger plot points of the story, or just an overarching message that the book conveyed or something. But at the end of the day, I think whether you remember every single character's name and everything that happened in a story, or a bunch of historical figures and information, that experience is very valuable, but it doesn't mean the experience of reading something and it not sticking as firmly in your mind isn't also a valuable reading experience. I think that the act of reading itself is something that I care about very deeply, and that's something that never diminishes. You may spend hours with one book and a couple hours with another, but you still spent the time with those books. Of course, my favorite books end up staying with me, and those are the books that I want to reread, but I'm not opposed to rereading something that I didn't even love, honestly, just to experience it again and see if my experience stays the same. If I were to reread a book, I'm sure I would remember it more than, only having read it once. And there's always something to learn upon a reread as well. What is reading with intention? For me, reading with intention starts prior to even reading a book. It actually starts with the selection of the book. I am someone who decides to be very intentional with the books that I am reading. There's so many books that I want to read. There's so many books in this world, and I can't read them all. And my intentions start there with a selection of what I want to read and what I'm interested in. And I have a very, very long to be read list, but all of those books were selected with intention. I don't really read books randomly or on a whim particularly. I might read a book that I had just heard about, but it wasn't at that point a random book. I'm now reading this book because I saw something or heard something about it or read something about it that made me want to read this book and think that this book is going to be valuable to me. I do try and be intentional about the act of reading as well, in that I try to do it often. I think that it's really important to continuously build momentum with your reading and to also just constantly engage with it. And some days I only might read like news or articles that I see online, but I think it's important for me to intentionally read every single day. And some days that's a lot, some days that's a little, but I do think I am near the point where I can confidently say that I do read every day, and that is something intentional about my reading. I also try and reflect on what I'm reading, and that can come in a lot of different ways as well. Now, having a booktube, I do actually talk about every book that I do read. I will say that prior to having a booktube, I might not actually have talked about every single book that I've ever read. I read a lot of books, and not everyone around me reads as much as I do or reads the same things that I do. So there were some books that I would consume and I didn't ever talk about them. And I think that the act of talking about a book is an act of reflection, and that has helped me be more intentional with understanding what I'm reading, seeking different perspectives on what I just read. And it's something I find extremely enjoyable about reading, is the act of discussion. I am not an annotator. Most of my books come from the library, or they are books that I intend to resell, give back to the used bookstore or another little free library, so I don't tend to heavily mark up anything that I am reading. However, I do take some photos. That's something I could be better at, is actually documenting the specific lines or facts or whatever else that I'm reading that I want to stay with me. I think that's an intention that I could be more intentional about and try to just increase my kind of catalog of things that I've read, parts of a whole book, that I really want to be able to reference again in the future. What interests you about someone else's relationship to a book? Honestly, if I know you and I like you, I could listen to you talk about any book that you are reading. It doesn't matter how interested I am in the book or my interest in wanting to read that book for myself. I like hearing about why people are reading certain things and why you chose that book and what you're getting out of it, and are you enjoying it? On BookTube, I will say I mostly watch and consume content of people that are reading very similar to me. Maybe they're not reading the exact same books as I am, but they dabble in a similar genre, maybe authors that I'm interested in. In real life, I'm a much better practicer of caring about what everybody is reading, because if you want to talk to me about books in person, you're my friend, even just someone that I encounter, and for whatever reason we're having a conversation about books, my interest will definitely be kept by whatever you are talking about. Doesn't matter how interested I am in the actual book. I just find it really fascinating how different people connect with literature and reading and the things that they're interested in. And oftentimes, a lot of people put me onto things that I didn't know that maybe now I am interested in, because I heard you talk about it, I didn't know anything about it prior, and now I'm very interested in learning something about it as well. How do you talk about books with others? What do you usually want them to know about a book? I talk about books with the internet now, which isn't something I particularly thought that I would do, but I just decided one day I would do it, and I'm finding it really fun. And I also talk about books in my personal life with people, with other readers, family members, friends. I talk about books with the librarians when I go to the library, if there is a bookstore with a chatty bookseller. In terms of what I want them to know about a book, I think I want them to know whatever they would like to know. And I think different people want to know different things about a book. And it's all, personal taste. Me personally, I like to know a little bit about what the book is about, and oftentimes what kind of themes or messages it's trying to convey. I also do like hearing a little bit about that as well. Some people might prefer to go in blind. Some people like spoilers. My sister is someone who likes to be spoiled on stuff before she reads it, or consumes it. And I think that it really depends on what the person wants. in terms of what I want them to know and how I talk about books, at least on my booktube, is I definitely try and approach with a non-spoilery synopsis, unless specified that I would talk about spoilers, and then a little bit about my enjoyment of the book and maybe the greater like themes or discussion that the book is trying to tackle as well. And I think I use that approach just because that's what I like to look for when I like to hear other people talk about books. Do you review books? Yes, I do. On my booktube channel here. I also have a Goodreads as well, which I made a goal last year to write a written review on every book that I had read in 2025, which I did. I don't write very academic reviews at all on Goodreads, or whether I'm talking about it here. That's not my style. I want things to feel casual. I don't want to force out a bunch of extra words on something that I might just want to say, I liked it. And, you know, I think that is fine for me. That's how I prefer to review books at this time. I do also now have a Bookstagram. That's something very new that I wanted to do in 2026. So I now have a Bookstagram where I'm not totally sure what I want to do with it, but it will be a reflection of my reading and the things I'm liking and the books I'm picking up and different things like that. It'll be similar to my booktube in that way. Do you use a rating system? Why or why not? This is a great question, and I think that this is a question that I love to hear other people answer because it can vary so widely by person to person. I do use a rating system. I have a Storygraph and I have a Goodreads. Those let you put stars on a book, and I do. For the most part, there are some books that I do not put stars on Goodreads or Storygraph, and that's on a case-by-case basis, and I'll say it's pretty rare that I don't leave a star rating on a book. But that is the only way that I interact with stars for a book. And the reason for that is I don't think it's a very great representation of anything really about the book at all. They're just so nondescript. And I do put star ratings on there more so for a bigger picture, so I can see things like my average rating over an entire year or a month, so I can just gauge in general, am I enjoying the books I'm picking up or am I not? And that is its only use for me. I don't care about star ratings in that a star rating someone gives does not affect my desire to read or not read the book. It's what they say about it. Goodreads and Storygraph is the only place that you'll see me put star ratings on books. I don't do that on my Bookstagram, and I've never done that on my booktube as well. I just don't think it's useful. I think maybe to some people, they like to hear that. You know, it's nice. You can make a nice graphic with, you know, my 5-star reads or whatever. But I like to gauge based on what the person is telling me about the book, if I am interested or will like it and things like that. And that's the kind of thing that I like to present to other people as well. Do you ask yourself if you liked a book, and how much does liking a book matter? I'll say in terms of star rating, liking a book does matter. My star ratings for Storygraph and Goodreads are very much like, did I like the book or did I not? And that, again, is just because my use of those stars is to determine, did I enjoy what I was reading or not? And I do ask myself if I liked a book. I want to like every book I read. I think reading is pleasurable, and I want it to be pleasurable. And it's not normally pleasurable if I don't like a book. It might make me angry. It might just feel like a waste of time. And those are things that I'm not trying to seek out in my reading. I do read some books and finish them, and I don't like them. And I might still finish them because someone who I care about very deeply recommended that book to me, because I want to talk about that book with a certain person, or because I think even if I disliked the book, there is still value to be found within that reading experience. And I do think that is always true, just sometimes it's not worth the time. What do you seek out from others who read publicly? Reviews, summaries, analysis, a curriculum, or what? I've been a watcher of BookTube much longer than I've been making my own BookTube content, and what I seek out has changed over the years. At first, I was only served up people very like popular in the algorithm, people with lots of subscribers, and inherently those people are reading very, very popular books. And I'll say that I'm not super interested in that anymore. I do read some popular books and very well-known books, but I'm far more interested in reading books that are lesser known, or just have a smaller readership in general, especially because those books are books that are most likely going to be very new to me, in that I don't know anything about the author, I don't know anything about the book, and also I don't hear many people talking about that, and I really want to know for myself. Over the years, I think my focus has shifted to watching smaller creators who are reading less popular books. Another thing is that I read about 50-50 nonfiction and fiction. And I'll say the nonfiction side of BookTube appears to be just quite a bit more smaller in nature, in that I think more people prefer to read fiction, or at least fiction is very, very popular. And so I do seek out people who read a mix of nonfiction and fiction. I think you can see just how much more popular fiction is with content creators, in that most of my recommendations I get at this point come from online in various different ways. And if you look at my To Be Read, it is very heavy on the fiction, even though I actually read about half and half, fiction and nonfiction. And it's just that so many more people that I am watching and am interested in are primarily talking about fiction. So I do my best to try and seek out some people who are also reading nonfiction that I'm interested in as well. I do like standalone reviews, but I only watch them after I've read the book for myself. I do really like prediction videos about book prizes and things like that. I'm not someone who like reads all of the Women's Prize for Fiction, or particularly cares about reading everything that appears on these best of lists or are awarded different things. But I like to keep up on it, and I am very interested in prediction videos, in that they always introduce me to so many interesting things, and inevitably the books talked about on the prediction videos don't all make it onto those long lists. So I get a lot of new release information that way, and just stuff I might not hear about otherwise. Honestly, I'm a fan of the classic wrap-up video. I like hearing people talk about a group of books that they read at one time, and I like hearing about books that they didn't like. I like hearing about books that they did like, and I like seeing just in general across a variety of books what a certain person is reading. And the last question is, who do you go for those things? So I'm going to take a moment to recommend some channels that I really like to watch. I'm going to make a point, as Sophie did, to mention people that I haven't already mentioned and talked about on my channel. So I'm going to start with Sarah. I really like her style and approach to her reviews. Gunpowder Fiction and Plot is an amazing channel. He reads a lot of newer releases, and in general I love the way that he talks about books, in that it's very lighthearted but very enthusiastic, and there's honestly almost no book that isn't described as amazing by Gunpowder Fiction and Plot that I don't want to read, just based on the enthusiasm and the excitement for these books. Modern Ajuma, which is Yana, she reads a lot of books that I'm interested in, and a lot of books that I also have never heard of. And particularly her nonfiction picks are things that maybe aren't on my radar. She reads a very good mixing of like backlist and newer releases, which I also appreciate as well. And in general, I really enjoy watching her channel. Big Nate's book reviews always makes me laugh at some point watching his videos. He reads a lot of older books, a lot of classics, a lot of big and maybe challenging books. And that's something that I honestly really like to watch content about. Not that I read a ton of books that fit the bill with that, but my interest in reading those books I think is great. And while I only get to a couple of them a year, I really do admire the pursuit of reading these hard and challenging books, and people who center their entire reading experience around these so-called challenging books. Yogurt Shotgun is a channel that I just recently watched for the first time, and he introduced me to the Bradbury method of reading, which I'm about to make a video on where I test out this Bradbury method. But in general, I like his approach to reading, in that he has a very intentional approach to reading, and I think you can tell by the books he selects, the way he talks about them. I just really like the casual style video. I like videos that feel like you're just talking to a friend, they're not overproduced, and just give you a more relaxed feeling to them. A person I quite literally just subscribed to today who I want to talk about is Evelyn at A Much Needed Break. She made an amazing video predicting the International Booker Prize, and it's also a perfect example about why I value those kinds of videos, because I did not know about a single book that she mentioned that she had predicted for the international long list, and that made me super excited. I love hearing about things that I've never heard about before. That's going to conclude today's video. If you want to answer one or all of these questions, do so below or maybe in your own video. And I want to thank Sophie again for making a brilliant tag and posing these lovely questions to the BookTube community. I had a fun time answering them, and I'll see you next time.